Hey, everybody. Here we are.
Yep.
Back on the pod.
Back on the pod. Back from one fest before another fest.
In between fests and recording from home.
Yeah.
Because there's 9 million things happening today.
Yeah, there's a lot of things happening. We can't do them all at the studio.
We can't.
It's not the time.
It's just one more step.
One more step.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I'm going to get to hear you talk about private coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, private sessions.
Private. Okay, like private yoga sessions.
Yes.
Oh, was coaching involved in that, or did I just make that up? Did I pull that out of nowhere? Because I assumed it was going to be about coaching.
No.
Not necessarily. Can we include coaching in this discussion?
Well, I would say that coaching is a natural part of guiding private sessions. And I think that that's one of the ways that, like, a lot of yoga teachers feel overwhelmed and intimidated when they start doing private sessions, because it's like, oh, I'm just taking what I do in a classroom full of 20 people and I'm doing it one-on-one.
Yeah.
But the coaching aspect, the conversation, the connection, the trust, the rapport, all of those things that you're building as a relationship with your private client, it is very different.
Yeah.
Very different than a drop-in yoga class.
I'm thinking that because in the classes I've taken with you, you often start by saying like a brief check-in.
Yeah.
To the class. And
Yeah.
it's like not meant necessarily to have people answer you. Like you don't go around the room and be like, well, how are you in your body right now? How are you feeling? How about you? And you. You don't do that. You just ask everyone to kind of check in.
Mm-hmm.
But in a private session, there is that back and forth.
Right.
That you are expected to participate in. And honestly, right? Because otherwise, what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess that could be intimidating as someone who hasn't done that a lot or at all.
Yeah.
And trying to do some of those private sessions. That's the thing. It's a part I never really would have thought of until I was like in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, there needs to be more than just the regular.
Roll out your mat.
Roll out your mat. Right.
Let's go. Yeah. It's just so totally different. And I don't think that that's talked about a whole lot. And there are resources out there for teaching private yoga sessions, but I still think that a lot of them miss the depth that you go into in a one-on-one environment. And then on top of that, I'm going to use some Ed lingo.
Oh,
so
it's throwback.
Gird your loins.
Oh, are we going to say Vygotsky or something?
I'm not going to say Vygotsky. No. We're not going to make those kind of references. But like,
that fucking guy.
You can't have a private session that is well orchestrated without it being student centered.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. It has to be student centered. And so you can come up with a plan for class the way that you would any other class, and then show up at someone's house or wherever it is that you're performing, like you're performing a service, you're showing up to be their private session teacher, and they are in a totally different energetic space.
Right. You can kind of get away with that in a group setting because it's always like, listen to your body.
Right.
You can do the thing we're doing or
Right.
not, and both is fine.
Right.
But if that happens too much or at all in a private session, you run into the why am I here? Because
Yes.
you're not doing what part of the private session is catering to exactly what I am coming at you with and bringing to the table.
Right.
Yeah. I was about to say we're going to hear about it straight from the horse's mouth because you do many private sessions in various forms, and you would be the horse. I don't know how you feel about that.
I never really understood that analogy,
All right.
but
I didn't either.
I'm fine with being a horse. Horses are great.
Horses are great. They're beautiful animals.
Horses are great. Yeah. And so this is probably the number one topic that is not covered in our yoga teacher training programs at length, but that students ask the most questions about. Like they'll come to office hours, they'll write in. It's a lot of curiosity. Like someone asked me if I would do a private session. I said yes, because that's just the yoga teacher way, right? Someone's like, oh, would you be interested in blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then you say yes, and then what? You know, like, I don't know what I'm actually doing. I don't know how to formulate this.
Yeah.
I don't know what the structure should be. There's so many variables. Like when do you do an intake? Like, so through the years of doing private sessions in a variety of formats, so people coming to yoga studios and I'm meeting them there, me going to their houses and apartments, me going to their work places and doing them there. And then, of course, the online format, through all the years of these different ways of showing up in private session capacity as a guide, like I've come up with a formula. Like I've come up with
Right. You have your lesson plan.
an approach of running private sessions that helped me ground and stop feeling like I was spending so much time like in guesswork around it. So we decided to teach a course, and the course starts June 29th, I think. June 29th. And it's a 6-week session of, getting used to all of the ways that you connect with a student differently in a private session, a methodology that you can 100% just take and make it your own, but also a place to have open conversations about how different this is and what makes the approach so different with a private session.
Yeah. I was going to say something.
You forgot.
I know.
Damn.
The phrase "the horse is straight from the horse's mouth" is thought to come from the practice of assessing a horse's age by examining its teeth. Closer to the horse's mouth, metaphorically, the more accurate the assessment is believed to be. Oh, that's where it came from.
Okay. Close to the source.
Close to the source. What was your first? Do you remember your first private session?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Yep.
Tell me about it with the perspective of like what you did, and we're going to assume it's like a first draft of anything. It's going to be rocky. So it's like it's not going to be perfect. Right? The first pancake. So walk me through your first session, what you were thinking, how it went, and then adjustments you made either during or after.
Okay. So this is not an uncommon scenario. A spouse wrote me an email and said, my husband needs to do yoga.
Okay.
For a variety of reasons.
Yes.
And he doesn't feel comfortable going to a drop-in yoga class.
Okay.
So would you be willing to do a private session with him? I want to get it for him for, I think it was actually like a Father's Day gift or something, like a gift certificate kind of thing.
Okay.
And
that's a great idea because it's like a present, something that could be useful. But I bet you $1,000 that person did not ask for that.
They 100% did. He did not ask for this.
The wife is like, no. Trust me, this is your present.
Right. Well, the wife was also like, no. I spent money on this. Right. So like
these don't look like a box of Titleist Pro V1 golf balls.
No.
Like, no, they're not.
Not golf balls at all. It's interesting though that he was a golfer.
Oh yeah.
So it was a hook. Like,
I mean, God, you gotta try to make it more masculine and more sporty.
More.
I mean, just serious. It's like, how do you rope in men that need this kind of work? That could really benefit from doing this work for a long period of time. How do you hook in the normies, the normal men? Normcore. You make it manly or about finding the sport they play and
explaining how they could do it better.
Excellence and longevity.
Never would I do that when it comes to golf.
Guaranteed to shave 5 strokes off your game just by being in shape.
It was more like, how do you not hurt yourself while you're doing this?
Well, if he's still in his 30s.
He was.
Oh, then you push the angle of like, this is going to make you better.
Right.
If he's in his 40s, he'd be like, this is going to make sure you can do this for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, that's the part of the private session, right? Where like, you could say this to a room of people.
Yeah.
It's one thing, but it's like, you really got to put that making it personal, which is it's a tricky, hard thing. I have so much respect and awe for people that can do like that on a private session, one-on-one level. It's just it's a lot of different hurdles and challenges compared to a room. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
And so I did ask the wife who was booking this appointment, who was one of my students.
Did he not know he was showing up for this? He's like, shows up in a polo shirt with his
No.
golf clubs. He's like, well, this isn't a private lesson. You said private lesson. He's like, no, I said private session.
Private session. So what I said was I would be willing to do this private session, but that he needed to call and make the appointment.
Nice.
He needed to call and like, I'm not signing
Right.
up for convincing somebody to do yoga.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if he was going to come in with like a, yeah.
Right.
And
If the first time you met or spoke to
Yeah.
him was when the session starts, you don't get that intake conversation of like, because I thought you can assuage a lot of fears and doubts in just a 5-minute conversation of what the session's going to look like. That
right.
If you showed up on the morning of and just you could have that chip or that like that doubt,
Or just like, I don't care about this.
Right.
This is not my
Yeah,
thing. And my wife is making,
And
you know,
could-
like I have spent time in my life being the wife making the husband do the thing. Right. And so I was not
I
interested.
mean, not in the last 10 years.
No,
so.
not in the last 10 years. So I was not interested in being the person that has to be with the husband that doesn't want to be doing the thing. Like I'm doing that for somebody else. Somebody else's marriage can do that.
I barely have space and time to do it my own.
I was just like, Jesus. So that was a condition that he had to set it up. And
That's
I
a
did
great
do
idea.
brief intake through email. Like, what do you think you can get out of this? Like knowing
Right.
nothing about what you're getting into. He had said that in the email. Like, what do you think you could get out of this? And we started there. But I came into this session, right, with a whole lot of assumptions and bias
Yeah.
that this man wanted like a workout, wanted something intense, wanted to
right.
wanted to get to know how to do the harder things that maybe he didn't feel comfortable being a novice at in a room full of other people, which is common. People don't want to go to a yoga class because they don't want to look foolish. You know, it's a real concern people
You
have.
know what? One of the biggest weights off my shoulders in my life is when I stopped worrying about that. No, I'm serious because I more often come across it playing golf, especially if like you're teeing off and there's like people behind you, people watching on the first tee.
Yeah.
There's those like butterflies, like oh my god, and then you get to the point where like, who cares?
Who cares?
Who cares? Doesn't
Cares?
matter. And that man, that's just like,
Freedom.
picking up that weight and just putting it down. Yeah.
So I was incredibly nervous.
This is a very interesting scenario for a first session,
Yeah.
right? Like if the wife wrote in,
Right.
and for her,
Sure.
this is a different level. I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
it's a different scenario to step in on your first
Yeah.
private session.
Well, particularly because where I was teaching way back then was a very small yoga studio in Vermont. And there were maybe like 5 people in class. Like this was not New York City yoga class where
Right.
there's 45 people jammed in a room and you're
Right.
mat to mat, like in each other's business, right? So like if you're new to yoga for the most part, you just go to the back of the room. No one's paying attention to you.
Right.
You know, so it was interesting, but it was my first opportunity. And I will say that I get that longing that you have as a yoga teacher when somebody asks you something to be like, oh, I can do a private session.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
like,
like
oh,
That says so much. It's like you've already passed
sure.
several tests in their eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like that you would be a good person to introduce this or like they trust you. Like there's something that feels very good about that request.
Sure.
So
I mean,
of
anytime-
course I said yes,
Anytime
being
anyone,
woefully ill prepared.
I would not say that. I would say you were. I mean, you're doing it for the first time. Yeah, it's unfair to say you were underprepared, unprepared, because you do anything for the first time, you're by definition not probably fully prepared. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's that ego trip that we all get if someone's like, "I would like you to teach me this thing.
Yeah.
Can you teach me how to play guitar? Can you teach me how to do this?" I'm like, "Oh, you've seen me do it and think I'm good enough to tell you how to do it." That's flattering. I get it. Sure.
So it's so interesting that you're asking me this, is because this is a wild ride.
Oh, I love it.
This is a wild ride.
Great. Podcast fodder. Hit me with it.
So I had a plan. It was mostly vinyasa flow, a lot of sun salutations, a lot of chaturangas.
Did you make this plan before or after talking to him the first time?
After.
Yeah,
After.
so you spoke to him, like you
Yep.
emailed a little bit.
Yep.
You spoke to him.
We made a plan.
And then you scheduled it.
Yep.
And then you start making a plan.
Totally.
Gotcha.
And I would like to preface this by saying, like, I had never met him. I knew his wife and I knew his sister. Both of these women came to my classes.
Okay.
And so there was a considerable amount of buy-in, right? So because they spoke about me to him, he wasn't like, who's this person, right? He came in with a level of trust based on what his wife and his sister had been telling him. So he got to the session, and it's pretty common to start a private session with just a very brief check-in, like no more than 10 minutes. Like, how are you today? Is there anything going on in your body I need to know about? Please take care of yourself. Stop. Tell me you don't want to do something. Like all of just those like check-in pieces. Yep. We got about we basically got to the warm-up piece. So we got through the warm-up of the private session. We're standing in Samastitihi, pose of stillness, both standing up. Like, the other thing to note about private sessions is often, if you're not also doing the poses, there can be some awkwardness. Sure. Because if you're not doing the poses, you're just watching somebody do yoga. Right? So you're always faced with that decision as a facilitator too. Like, am I mirroring basically and modeling, demonstrating so they have a visual, or am I staying present? And I err on the side of model and mirror. Sure. Otherwise it feels a little bit like they're on the spot, and people get extraordinarily self-conscious.
Yep. Makes sense.
So we're doing the yoga, we're breathing, samastitihi, standing there. I think at that point in my teaching practice, it wasn't uncommon for me to then ask people after warm up, like, why are you here?
Right.
So like, it's a pretty common cue in that moment in the practice. I would say, why are you here? What are you seeking? Yeah. Tears streaming down this man's face.
No way.
100% streaming. And I was
I've never heard this story.
I don't think you have.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Tears streaming down his face. And this is another important component of holding space for people, right?
Yeah.
Our human instinct, partially because it makes us anxious when people emote, and we're not comfortable with our own emotions. So we're definitely not comfortable with other people's emotions.
Right.
We try to manage the anxiety in the space and cut it, either by making a comment or intervening or a hand on the shoulder or something, which is so much more about us than it is about our client. Right? Because I can't know that any of that is going to be supportive to this man who is tearing up in front of me.
I mean, anything that you would kind of default towards to comfort someone in that situation. Yeah. Things that I would do in that situation. I probably would not want done to me. I'm thinking about it. But this is what people, I feel like a Vulcan, for God's sake. Oh, this is what humans like in this time of they're experiencing this. So you should do this. I'm like, but I wouldn't want that. So you find yourself in this kind of like awkward, like, ugh, how do I handle? Yeah. And again, first time. So not any experience with how to handle that.
And I honestly think that this comes from not just raising teenagers, or adolescents, I should say, working with adolescents, working in middle schools and high schools, right? Something that I learned early on is when an adolescent is emoting.
Why do you use different terms? Like, do you say adolescent, teenager?
Because adolescence starts younger, like 9, 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
When an adolescent is emoting, the last thing that they want you to do is to bring attention to it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So my conditioning was to just hold, like to just be like, okay. And resist reaching for tissues, going to like any kind of physical touch. Nope. I'm on my mat. You're on your mat. You're having a process. I'm going to let you have your process. Right. So I was like, okay, pivot a little bit. We're going to take a deep breath in, sweep the arms up, exhale, bow forward, step back into child's pose.
Yeah.
So you can just put your face right in the mat, have a moment without me staring at you. Right. And maybe, and definitely that was also my anxiety kind of being like, I did my bias, right? I did not expect. I was like power vinyasa, lots of twists, low back releases.
Yeah.
He's probably a man who has a very tight psoas muscle.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Those are all fair assessments, having not seen him in person.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Having never seen him in person.
And especially having a wife that's like, my husband needs a yoga session.
I think I Facebook stalked his wife's profile. Like we were friends. It wasn't like,
right.
you know, on Facebook. I think I was like kind of looking at photos, looking at posture, looking at like how does he stand ahead of time. But it's very minimal information that you can get, you know. It's like a picture of them at a wedding from 2 years ago. Like, what am I looking at here?
I don't know. I've seen you watch people take 10 steps past you that were like anywhere, people watching, and you just can't help but like, oh, that person needs this. Oh, you see how I can tell how they're walking. Their hips need this, or their shoulders need this.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I've seen it.
So, as we're in child's pose, because again we're mirroring, I like lowered the music. I got up. I lowered the music a little bit. I did like just allow some space for him to do whatever it was that he needed to do with the emoting, and then we moved through the rest of the practice that I had planned. I didn't talk about firm boundaries of time. So I didn't talk about that right out of the gate. Like, this is a private class. This will be 75 minutes, right? Like, max 90, so that we're just doing yoga and we're checking in and then you're leaving. Like, this isn't, I didn't set that out right at the beginning. I just kind of made assumptions that there would be assumptions around this, and maybe he would have other stuff he needed to do after the session. So we moved through the rest of the practice that I had laid out. I would say the main differences, once I noticed that he was like in a vulnerable spot, was I took the practice down a notch. So it was less like, I didn't want to be excessively moving the body to avoid being with the feelings that were in the space. Like, something had clearly opened and started to move.
Right.
And I didn't want it to be like, well, we're going to like power yoga our way through this.
If you're too much moving, feeling, you're trying to, like you said, bypass.
Right.
And how soon into the session did you notice the tears?
15 minutes.
Okay. So like at the top.
Yeah. Basically. I mean, it was just the warm up. Like, we were at the end of the warm up.
Tricky. I mean, that's another thing about people not being comfortable or having experience holding space for people having feelings or emotions, where you're like, that like jittery, like, well, let's just keep moving. Let's move and make sure if we move, we can forget that we're having them, or like it'll make you feel better, instead of, I mean, in a private yoga session is a great place to sit with those feelings. Any other setting may be like, no, let's just keep moving so I can bypass this and I can feel it later. You know what I mean? Like, not every situation calls for that, but this situation calls for, I think, sitting and being with it, not trying to get past it too quickly.
Which is another stark difference to being in a group yoga class. Because, like, let's be honest, it is not unusual for people to emote in a yoga class. At the beginning, in the middle, or at the end, like something starts to move and like tearfulness can happen. Or sometimes the emoting is like people get giggly in the middle, like everything feels silly.
Huh.
So there's energy that moves in a yoga practice. And a lot of times people are like, oh, this is either they've been conditioned to squish the emoting. You're in a room full of 20 people. We're not going to do this here. Or if they do feel comfortable enough to allow the release to happen, there are 20 people in that room. The teacher isn't, I mean, I'm going to say this like it's obvious, and maybe I should say it like FYI. As a yoga teacher in a group setting, you don't go to the mat of a student who is emoting and attempt to comfort them because you're not actually comforting them.
Sure.
You're comforting yourself.
Yeah.
You're comforting yourself.
100%.
You feel a type of way about their emoting, and then you insert yourself into that scenario as opposed to like, oh, this person is crying and I'm having a feeling about them crying.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine myself in that scenario and thinking about situations as a teacher of high school where someone is crying in class.
Right.
Right? Like, in that scenario, I go into like are you okay? Like, because I'm the care provider essentially in that scenario for a child. It's a kid.
Right.
If I was in a group of adults, I would probably, I mean, I don't know if this says more about my upbringing. I'd be like, you got this, right? I'm going to leave you be. I'm going to hands off. I don't know how to make whatever you're going through better or if I even need to.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like as an adult, I don't know if it's saying something about like my comfort level with dealing emotions like that, or you just know that like they have my intervention. It's almost arrogant to think that like, oh, I need to intervene to make something better happen. And a lot of times it's just they can handle it themselves.
I mean,
right?
I feel that way about adjustments and assists in a yoga class too.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like it is a whole series of assumptions is being made when I step onto your mat and move your body, assuming I know what your body needs in that pose. Like that is a level of assumption.
Or
never
what the body
would I ever
can do, where you're like, oh, deepen into the stretch or whatever. You're like, I'm as deep as I deep can get deep.
Right.
Like
so
it's just not going to happen right now.
Let me be in my process. Like, because that's actually, I mean, that's a whole side tangent that I can go on there. But we ended the session, you know.
So like, did he, I won't say, I hate to use the phrase make a recovery. Like he kept going through the practice as you let it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like so tell me about, did you make adjustments in real time?
Yes.
Like what?
Just a couple.
What did you, I mean, you don't have to go into detail, but like, did you remove things? Did you add things like child's pose and easier things, or like, what was it
I slowed the practice down and created like more opportunities for him to hold a posture. Right? Because when we're holding a posture, we get to be in discomfort. And a lot of times when we're moving really fast in postures, we're not fully embodied in exactly what is going on. Like it keeps the mind from kicking up when you have like that's why people are so drawn. I'll speak for myself. That's why I was so drawn to hot power vinyasa, Baptiste style yoga initially, was because it made my brain stop working.
Yeah. And I'm just reflecting on times. This is sort of similar, where if I was upset, agitated, or annoyed, it's like you can't sit still. I couldn't sit still. So like I need to move myself, my body, go somewhere, do something.
Right.
And that's instead of sitting with it, because it was all a means to almost ignore it, or like, you know, and I mean, we say it's like, oh, I need to like work it out, or like, you know, get it out of my system, or
earthquake.
But yeah, no, it's so much more different than just sitting with it, feeling the emotions. It's and letting it pass, or working with it, or just being in it. Yeah.
So I made some of those adjustments. It allowed him some space to just like let things move if he wanted them to, and no pressure. And so then Shavasana happened, and we started to wrap up the session, or I thought we started to wrap up the session.
Oh, I haven't never heard the story, so I'm excited to hear.
And I was like, so how are you feeling now in your body? Like I was pretty specific about that. How are you feeling in your body?
Right.
It just launched. I mean, I learned so much about this man's life in a 15-minute, monologue.
Wow.
Of what was going on for him.
Wow.
And mostly listened and did a terrible job at wrapping up that session, in the sense that I wasn't prepared for the yoga etiquette to not be there, of like class ends. Class ends, and you get your stuff and you go, and there might be another class in there in a few minutes. So like that piece was kind of missing, and it didn't feel like a solid. It didn't feel like there were bookends on that session.
Yeah, I think I would be shocked if it wasn't common for things like that to happen during a private session, because you think like a lot of the rules don't apply right now. Like, I mean, like the session's over and I just get up and leave. It's like, no, wait, I mean, like it's just you and me right now. Like we can have those conversations or talks that you may have with the teacher given the opportunity. But like, since it's just you and I, no one else is here, of course we can do that, right? Mm-hmm. Like, do they slip into that without having a firm boundary or communicating an idea of how to end that?
Yeah,
so this person just emotionally was like, here's everything that's going on.
Right. And so being aware that this is probably not something this man typically does. Right. I felt obligated isn't the right word, because it didn't feel like obligatory, but I felt like this was a privilege to be trusted in this way. Yeah. And I didn't want him to have a bad experience, right? Like, and sure, but there was part of my brain that was like, if I do this well, I have a regular private client.
Yeah, right.
And that could be a considerable amount of money in my budget. So I don't want him to feel dismissed. I don't want him to be like, well, that was really great for you to open up and to cry in my class and to, share all these vulnerable things with me, and let me know if you want to book again.
Yeah. Like, you can go sit in the exit room and cry.
I was so not prepared for that part at all. And it went on way too long, like to the point where.
How long did it go on?
I think start to finish the session was 3 hours.
Holy shit.
Yep.
How long?
Yep.
It was Yeah. So wait a minute. When did the yoga stop?
The yoga stopped
75 minutes. Did you say that?
No, the yoga stopped probably an hour and a half into, like, from when he got there.
Sure.
To the end of the yoga was 90 minutes.
Okay.
And then
it was another hour and a half.
It was another hour and a half
of like talking.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mostly listening. I was mostly listening.
Yeah. Talking by him.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah. I did not get paid enough for that session.
No, just based on the time involved.
Right.
Did you hear from this man's wife? Like, how was the session? You were like, this lasted 3 hours. He shared some things.
So like I would never share.
Right.
And that was one of the things I said to her when she booked the session. I was like, just so that you know, whatever happens, I will not tell you what happens.
Right.
Because of confidentiality.
Is there some sort of actually in writing confidentiality clause or is it just kind of a general understanding that like you may share some shit and I'm not the one to share it with other people?
I mean, that's the thing, right? So yoga is an unregulated field. In a lot of ways, these things are ethics standards, all of that is being created based on where people's comfort level is. I just, in general, and this isn't unlikely, I mean, I'm not the person that shares other people's anything.
Yeah, I mean,
I just don't do that.
Same. It's like, it's not my news to give other people.
Right.
If you want, you can ask them, but like they told me, and that's where it ends. Kind
so from a like, I'm also like, why would this man trust me enough to book another session if I'm like sending his wife an email about
his wife and his sister, right? Something like that. It's like he walks into the house, they're both like, oh, "We heard what you said."
Right.
Like how much confidence does that instill?
Right. Right. So after that, there were like, he booked weekly having sessions.
Wow.
I was way better. Like I learned as it went on to be like, this is the price for a 90-minute session.
Yeah.
This is a price for a 3-hour session.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And yeah, I learned a lot from working with him as a private client. He then did start coming to group classes. He would come to classes with his wife and his sister too. Like, so, like rapport was built and blah, blah, blah. And I did feel in some ways like whether it was his comfort level with the practices or just knowing the terminology or just feeling like he knew me, so he was comfortable coming to class. Like, I felt like that initial hump of yoga would be good for him.
Yeah.
But he's not willing to show up to a yoga class definitely shifted. So from the perspective, I think, of his wife, she got what she wanted out of purchasing that private class for him. Right?
Yeah.
And things got so weird.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is where I learned all of it. Like everything is ultimate lesson, right? Like, so this is where I learned about the ethics, the power structure, the assumptions that people make about you as a yoga teacher, like how they perceive you as a teacher. And this man blew up his whole life. So it started with, he would pay me for sessions, and then he would also leave like $200 in envelopes underneath the mat of the yoga studio where I was. He would leave me gifts, and we had a whole conversation around gifts, and you can't bring me gifts. And so then he wouldn't bring me gifts, but gifts would show up at the yoga studio. And it evolved into him basically being like, we obviously are in love with each other. And I was like,
whoa.
No, we're not. And
wow.
And what you're feeling is just that you're having an experience in your body that is created by you, and it is internally sourced, but you are projecting it onto me because I am your yoga teacher. And I basically had to say to him, like, you can't come to my classes anymore. You have to find another yoga teacher. And I guarantee that you will have all of these bodily sensations with other yoga teachers as well.
Oh my God.
But
I've never heard this story.
No, we were barely dating.
And you still didn't tell me the story.
Fuck no.
Are you serious?
I'll tell you the story.
I'm almost mad that it's taken this long.
No way. I mean, mostly because I was like, well, I mean, I think as women, it's not uncommon to share these things with people and then have people be like, what did you do?
Sure.
You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
even
I mean,
even listening to this man's reflections, like when he was like, you know, well, are you seeing someone? I'm like, yeah, like I have a boyfriend, which I don't actually think we were official at that point. I was like, I have a boyfriend. And he was like, you don't walk like you have a boyfriend. He said something weird like that. Like your body language isn't like you have a boyfriend. And I was like, what is going on? Wow. So I learned a lot.
Yeah. Holy cow. Like what is that? Is it just like he's never or hasn't in a long time felt shared that had emotions move like that, whether he's talking about them or doing a physical practice that causes things to move. So like you said, it's just like he's just putting that on all on you. Wow,
well, he was like, essentially, it is our connection that enables me to feel like safe and like I can open up about these things and have emotions. And I've never done this with my wife. I've never done this with any other people. So this is clearly a like, you know, and like sometimes what happens when people are first dabbling into the like esoteric, spiritual, whatever, you know, he was like, clearly there's some kind of like twin flame. Like he was like trying to use
those words?
Yeah. Trying to use the language that he is very recently learning about.
Right. Well, and speaking as a man, it could be much easier to have those moments and emotions and communicate those things with someone you just met than with someone you've known for 20 years.
Right.
Like there's a whole lot of past experience in those years you have with someone that, accurately or not, shapes the way you view how they might handle emotions or things you're going to say.
Yeah.
So with a stranger, basically,
no risk.
There's no risk.
There's no risk. There's no, it's very low stakes in the sense that like he could have walked out of that studio and never really seen me again or never come back.
He could have shared something, but still slept in his own bed.
Yeah.
Consequence free.
He
shares something with his life or does like it breaks down over something.
Right.
It's like, we have to wake up in the morning and do things. And I'm going to have to see your face having me told you this and your reaction to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yep.
Wow. Damn, that is wild shit.
It was wild. And, you know, private sessions from that point on, like, I felt like I learned a lot. But what the big learning curve continued to be is meeting people where they are when that changes constantly. So coming up with kind of a framework of like, I hear this language from a client, this immediately brings me to this part of the chakra system, and I know where we can move from this dense energy to this subtle energy, and I have that formula to fall back on. If somebody comes in and is having like throat chakra language, I can be like, okay, this is where we're going to start, and I have a way to like do way less prep.
Right. I mean, that's so wild to me and wild and not in the way that like I don't believe you or like I don't know. It's more of like it's how you take what they say and hear like, oh, this is a root chakra thing you're expressing. This is the throat chakra, like, and then right there in your tool belt, a practice that can address that, and that's just pure experience if you're doing it for so long. But like having that, I mean, even just like having that as an idea. In someone who wants to do private sessions, you know what I mean? It's not just like, well, I got all my poses in a row. And that's a great place to start.
It's a great
but
place
also
to start.
like the more you dive into it, the more experience you get. It's like there's so many different things you can offer once you hear and understand language or like other ways people reflect or express how they're feeling about themselves or their energy or their body.
Because it is very unlikely. I mean, this was an extreme situation that happened. And I've really only had like a handful of private clients like that where it felt like, wow, this person's really like needing connection at such a deep level, right? If I knew then what I know now is I'd be like, oh, this is emotional hunger. You have such a deep emotional hunger that someone holding space for you and seeing you is bringing you into this like, we are meant to be together type of a space because he doesn't have any other framework for it. But at the time I didn't have that awareness or language. So for the purpose of this course, like there are charts, there are step-by-step. This is the practice that you do for this. This is the practice that you do for this. So it just lays everything out because there's always going to be a big enough learning curve. Private clients in a yoga setting, where else? Like you potentially could see a private client weekly.
Yeah.
people can't see their doctor every week.
People
sometimes go to therapy weekly, but it's still pretty rare that, it's maybe twice a month, every other week or whatever. So as a wellness professional, you are probably connecting with this person more than they connect with anyone else in their lives.
Yeah.
So it's not the yoga that is really the learning curve. It's the other part of it, which is kind of the coaching part, or the, being the guide part, is like, how do you stay in the role of a grounded teacher and present through that without trying to fix somebody or advise somebody, or all those habits that come in.
That's a habit that people go into. It's like, how can I help heal, fix? That's not what you're supposed to do. I mean, I hope this story doesn't put people off on the idea of coaching, or like private sessions rather, because it's like, I mean, you hear those stories, because I remember hearing stories like that as I was learning to be a teacher. You're like, oh my God, what am I doing? What if that happens to me? And it's like, yeah, everyone gets those things. Everyone meets those challenges. Everyone has those instances where like, I was not trained. I don't know how to handle this. This is my first day.
Yeah.
And you just meet it. And I honestly believe, you can learn, it gives you an opportunity. It's a great opportunity to learn, and you just lean in and help and try to do the best you can. And that's all you can do.
Well, and when you have a structure to fall back on, right, I really think that supports, it takes away at least a couple of the, I'm out here trying to navigate this ship with one oar, and gives you much more tools and a lot more grounding in how you approach being in a private session. And just going through a training gives you an opportunity to talk through some of these potential scenarios. So we can be like, what would you do?
It's always nice where it's like, great, you have a good plan.
You have a good plan. Hopefully you don't have to use it.
And also, like, don't be surprised if you have to throw out half of it because something you never would have expected happens. Because
100%.
If that isn't life in a nutshell, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the Art and Flow of Private Sessions. It's going to start 2 weeks.
Is that a Sunday, the 29th?
Sunday, the 29th. So a week.
That is 9 days from now. We can, 9 days.
Yeah. So it's going to be amazing. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity for one-on-one connection. And right now, people who register for the course get entered to win 4 private sessions with me.
Oh,
so that's
snap.
Fun. So maybe we get to also work together at that level.
I love that. Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, if anything, I just got to learn a new story that I've never heard. I probably wouldn't have ever heard unless we talked about this.
I haven't thought about that in so long.
So funny.
So you asked a great question.
Nice. All right.
So check out the Art and Flow of Private Sessions on our website. It is listed under our short programs, and spend some Sundays with me this summer.
Awesome. Thanks, honey.
Thanks,
Wi-Fi Pod. This is Matt.
This is Jeannie.
Thanks, everyone.